TLDR, I love it. I give it a 7 out of 10. To explain why I give it such a score, get ready for spoilers. Also, this is from a perspective of someone who has not read the books yet. The series starts off with Geralt fighting off a Kikimor. This is the mark of a good start for such an epic. Rather than telling you who the hero is, what he is, and his capabilities, in just 2 minutes of the start we can already tell what we're going to get, and the adventure our heroes experiencing. The Witcher games has always been about the fun of killing monsters, and to see a fellow gamer Henry Cavill playing as Geralt of Rivia warms the heart of many fans.
They released a game called Witcher 3 in about 5 years ago now. Played that game to the death.
Really?
And then I heard it was coming out. I met the showrunner, and that's when I learned there were books. Read the books, and I realized I was missing out on a whole world of stuff.
The first episode establishes a medieval fantasy setting where Geralt as a traveling monster slayer leaves off from one contract to another while meeting problematic characters along the way. After the premise was set, a mystery presents itself, although, this is where the series begins to have some storytelling difficulties. The introduction of the other protagonists were not well executed. The mystery revolves around Geralt's destiny on meeting a child in the future named Ciri. It's a simple plot that's not as grand as clashing with the Fire Lord, and it makes things easier to expect for an enjoyable journey, since that's what's going to have to make up for not having a goal of stopping some apocalypse or saving someone from the clutches of pure evil. But the problem here is that the future was not even hinted to be decades later. Yes, there were no timestamps plastered when Ciri was introduced, so for a new audience it will look like Geralt was doing his side quests while a war broke loose on Ciri's end. Both have their share of tragedies, and people are comparing the series to Game of Thrones already, because of their similarities of killing seemingly important characters without mercy, and that decisions will have their respective consequences. Don't get me wrong, The Witcher is far from a ripoff. The book was published since 1992 and the game was released since 2007, both are older than the Game of Thrones book 1996 and the show 2011, and yes, the good old Witcher game was already showing off the ability for players to shape the story via decision making, and those decisions surprisingly affect the sequels as well.
With terrorists, never. Blood at dawn.
Good point. Attack!
For the Flaming Rose!
Next is the introduction of another protagonist named Yennefer. It was a rocky start, especially when a mini controversy sprouted due to the casting of the role. Majority of the fans are undeniably gamers, so it became a surprise that Yennefer as the Anglo-Saxon that we've known for years was played by Anya Chalotra, a British Indian instead.
I'm just really excited to see how the fans react and what everyone's responses to it. I really enjoy it.
In my opinion, she did Yennefer justice. I can definitely see the
Emancipated, strong-willed woman
in her, and this is shown later on as her character evolves from a fragile abomination to the pinnacle of power and beauty. The same with Ciri's introduction. It was not clear when Yennefer started her journey, so her being a student of Aretusa might have happened 20 years ago for all we know, while Geralt's side was 10 years, and Ciri's is the present time. These are rough estimates, by the way. Now here's the problem: even if those years were correct, confusion still remains because it was never explained that witchers and sorceresses can live 100 years without aging much, and there are characters like the king and queen over here, normal humans that are actually the grandparents of Ciri who just look too young to be one. Bjorn and Jodi were both amazing, although, since dyeing their hairs white were out of the question, because to be fair, Est assumingly died young in the games as well, and when we suddenly see the episode where Geralt meets them we begin to scratch our heads and realize that we're actually following 3 separate timelines, and timestamps would have actually helped instead of finding it out in the middle of the series. In Yennefer's timeline, magic was presented as hard magic, most authors called it, due to the rules mentioned. The show failed to clarify as to how all of the magic users in this world suddenly ignore the said rules and spew magic with no fucks given. This may sound harsh, but most writers know that not everyone who watches the movie reads the source material. That's why there's this balancing act between explaining everything and showing everything. You can only cram in so much in just 8 episodes, and over-explaining kills immersion, but said explanations are in the books and the games, is still not a good excuse either. This is not a defense for the show's mistake. For those who are curious as to why, here's my take on it. Magic suddenly has no limit is because they failed to present that the source of magic doesn't only come from living things, but it can also be found on places deemed sacred.
I'm a sorceress, not a village herbalist. All I need is energy, a great deal of energy. We're very lucky this place is saturated with magic.
Elves and those who have elven blood like Yennefer and Ciri, are naturally gifted in using magic, with little to no consequences, and human mages that are not students anymore, can also use magic without struggling. The books may have a different take on it, but in the games, these are what I saw, and it resembles more of a soft magic system, rather than a hard one. Ciri's timeline was unfortunately boring. The visuals were amazing though. She goes through a war, a desert, a taiga, a forest full of dryads, and her power causes earthquakes and explosive surround sounds. But despite how epic that should have been due to the fast pace of the story and the back and forth traveling of the other protagonists along with Yennefer's teleportation magic, it kind of makes the world look small despite how big it actually is. I'm not saying that she has to be on the run in the desert for a full season, but the separation of timelines has caused more damage than most would realize. Enough about magic, it's time for Jaskier to shine. He's actually just a side character that Geralt met on the path to fulfill his destiny. Joey Beatty's performance, however, exceeded all expectations, especially his singing.
Krishna, oh Krishna, come quell your daughter's hunger.
I know it's not on the same level as Josh Groban, but it's unlike the game's Dandelion.
Must be that, still not wed. That is why so jolly. Ow, ow, ow.
Both versions of the character successfully added comedy to the story that's filled with cruelty and despair. Like living in a medieval age is actually an excruciating experience with all the manual labor, diseases, and the lack of many convenient things that we enjoy in the modern times. Add monsters and deadly magic to the mix, you'd begin to wonder why there's no looming apocalypse in the works. Spoiler alert, there actually is, but Joey added something new, something different from the game's Dandelion. I love Henry's dedication to the character, but there are times when lines like this felt forced.
Evil is evil, Stragable. Lesser, greater, middling. It's all the same. But now, if I have to choose between one evil and another, then I prefer not to choose at all.
That line became popular when CDPR released their Killing Monsters teaser for the Witcher Wild Hunt game. As a gamer, it's probably, and I'm speculating here, a homage for the game. Fan service which uptight critiques want to shame. It was actually a guilty pleasure hearing those lines again, years after the game was released. I hope he can loosen Geralt up a little in the next season. He's not all doom and gloom just because he's a mutant, and he can be so much more, especially when this line about emotions was conveyed clearly.
They say witches can't feel human emotion.
They say whatever justifies despising our kind.
Do you regret it? Becoming a witcher?
It's hard to regret something you didn't choose.
I think the show successfully made the journey on the way to meet Ciri enjoyable as many expected, despite the mishaps of some things, like the huge plot hole of Vilgefort's betrayal. Like, I know he's a traitor, it was revealed in the games too, but the logic and the process on why and how he betrayed is a mystery, and it happened abruptly, most likely due to the scarcity of episodes.
I can remember a night, not too far from here if I'm not mistaken. We hid in a cave while a blizzard raged all about. Does that sound at all familiar?
How could it not? We just set off to rescue Ciri from Vilgefortz.
Oh, our encounter with Vilgefortz. That is something I do not remember so fondly.
Seemed like a land straight out of a fairy tale back then.
Appearances, Geralt. Appearances, like Mamoons and Dopplers, deceive. So what did become of Vilgefortz?
Killed him. Sure wasn't easy, though.
It was fun to see Geralt hunting monsters, crossing paths with friends, not friends, yet, enemies and those in the grey. His lovely encounters with Yennefer make so much sense now compared to the games. I have always been on Team Triss, but that is far from happening in the series unless the next season makes it happen, but I have my doubts. All in all, the story was still great, music was good, CGI could be better, but after looking closely at the dragon, it's not actually the worst. In fact, the transparent magic effects were more atrocious because it becomes close to cringy, like the Flash waving his hands without tornadoes. Separate or multiple timelines, put timestamps, or don't do it again, magic system, add more explanations, but little by little, in each episode on the next season, and since Destiny is being compared to the Force now, try to address that as well, bit by bit. Give Jaskier more screen time. In the games, Dandelion is actually helpful and reliable in times of need despite how he is portrayed at the moment, so adding side quests that actually involves him will become fun episodes. And lastly, talented people worked on this show, that is clear, except for whoever was in charge of making use of these Nilfgaardian scrotum armor. Like seriously, there's no good excuse in using these. Budget-wise, it might have been cheaper for them to wear generic soldier garments with dark color schemes, or if those plastic-looking shells were actually plastic and was ordered to be custom-made like that, then it would have cost less without the scrotum texture, just plain smooth armor that could have actually deflect something. Clearly there's a motive here. If memes were actually free ads, then maybe it worked out for Netflix, but at what unnecessary cost? Both financially and artistically. Ciri from the start had so much potential, but it's understandable that surviving a war, grieving the loss of her loved ones, and escaping a madman while looking for a stranger is something that her character needs to properly reflect, which made the middle of her story unfortunately boring. In the games she was cheerful, spunky, and interesting, and I hope she gets a character development soon. And saying those last few lines in the end, indicating the start of her new journey, brings hope. This was unexpectedly fun to do. A mic and the lack of shyness would have made this review better, but regardless, I'm glad to be back, and this is the first time I ever reviewed something, so forgive me for such a jarring video. I wish Netflix all the luck and success on their next season. Thanks for watching.